How DCEU will beat MCU with their future lineup. MCU has always beaten DCEU in the field of comic book film series. However, with films like Wonder Woman 1984, the DCEU seems pretty victorious. Let's take a look at how the DC Extended Universe's future is quite bright in today's video, as this is how DCEU will beat MCU with their future lineup. Marvel Studios changed the game in a number of ways when it started the MCU in 2008 with Iron Man, presenting a model for how to establish a successful cinematic universe. In many ways, the MCU has remained the ideal and gold standard for cinematic worlds, but following the events of Avengers Endgame, the series is now at a crucial crossroads. This is where the DCEU may have an advantage over its competitors as its standalone films are finally hitting their stride. But that's not all. The DCEU is also completely embracing the concept of a multiverse, which might mean it surpasses the MCU in size sooner rather than later. Will the DCEU become better than MCU? Marvel currently has a 7-movie head start over DC, which debuted with Man of Steel in 2013, and in the time it took DC to release the next 3 films, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman, the MCU had churned out another 7 films. With the sheer amount of movies it is churning out like a factory, Marvel may have the upper hand in terms of box office, and, as demonstrated in the case of Wonder Woman, opportunities in the DCEU are grim but unpredictable. 2017. In addition, many fans believe that DC has always been superior to Marvel. That is without a doubt the case. In comparison to Marvel, the DCU has a better cast of characters. However, getting abreast of the factory that MCU is developing into is proving difficult for DCEU. But as Marvel begins to lose its edge, moving toward overly linear storytelling and relying a little too heavily on forced humor and unneeded and inappropriate quips, the DCEU may prove to be a better choice. How DCEU might beat MCU with its lineup. Since its beginning, the DC Extended Universe has always been a distant second to the far more popular Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, a number of DCEU solo films, such as Wonder Woman and Aquaman, have left Marvel in the dust, and after Avengers Endgame, the MCU may struggle to sustain its appeal as Marvel fans have already received a lot of closure and may want to move on to other stories. The DC Extended Universe has officially begun. The DCEU isn't going away anytime soon, with a robust slate of new DC films in development, and there's still plenty to look forward to. So it's time to take a look at all of the DCEU superhero films set to hit theaters in the coming years. And believe us when we say there are a slew of them on the road, with more specifics to come as time goes on. The Batman 2022. Matt Reeves is directing the solo Batman film. The new Batman is Robert Pattinson. Not only that, but this film will very certainly be the start of a new Batman trilogy. The Dark Knight will take a more low-key, detective-focused approach than previous Batman films. Jeffrey Wright will play Commissioner Gordon alongside Pattinson as Bruce Wayne Batman. Jamie Lawson is cast in an unspecified role. Alfred Pennyworth is played by Andy Serkis. Then there are the bad guys to deal with Paul Dano as the Riddler, Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, and Colin Farrell as the Penguin. The Batman will include an all-star rogues gallery of villains. Black Adam 2022. Black Adam, who is supposed to be the villain in Shazam, will now be played by Dwayne Johnson in his own film. The character is absolutely capable of carrying his own film. Jaume Collet-Serra will direct the film, which is written by Adam Stitzkel. If they chose to go that way, this kind of stuff may work as a fun prologue to better flesh out Shazam's mystical realm. More importantly, the film will introduce the Justice Society of America to the DC Extended Universe with Aldous Hodge as Hawkman, Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone, and Noah Centineo as Atom Smasher. The Flash 2022. Andy Muschietti of the Warner Brothers IT Films is the most recent director to attempt to bring The Flash to the big screen. Christina Hodson is writing, and she's certainly pleased the studio with her Birds of Prey script. Barry Allen will be played by Ezra Miller, who previously played him in the Justice League. Iris West is played by Kiersey Clemens. Barry's father, Dr. Henry Allen, will be played by Ron Livingston, replacing Billy Crudup, who played the role in Justice League. But this is where things start to go insane. For this film, Ben Affleck will reprise his role as Batman. Michael Keaton will also reprise his role as Batman in this film. Well, these are just some of the forthcoming movies by DCEU, and they seem pretty strong, maybe even strong enough to take down the MCU hype. But now, it's personal opinion time. Even though we've mentioned just some of the DCEU movies that could win over MCU, is it really possible for DC to surpass MCU? Personally, I believe that they're capable. It will simply take a very, very long time. For all of us, including DCEU, 2020 has been a mixed bag. I'm just concerned that the MCU will run out of ideas or that audiences will grow tired of superhero films. You can't expect to make 4 MCU films in a year and maintain the same level of consistency as the first 3. Part of the reason the MCU has been so successful is that it has a large number of dedicated and enthusiastic fans. Unlike Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, and Man of Steel, the Phase 1 films were actually fantastic and didn't polarize audiences. I believe that the DCEU simply needs to be patient and do its own thing in order to surpass the MCU. They must not duplicate the MCU. After all, do you recall what happened to the Justice League in 2017? The DCEU attempted to imitate the MCU and failed horribly. Instead of generating crossovers and attempting to be a carbon copy of the MCU, I believe the DCEU should go its own way, telling different storylines that aren't connected and focusing on quality, as well as developing their own multiverse rather than the cinematic universe. As of present, I do not believe the DCEU will fail, and I do think that they will surpass MCU with their upcoming movies.